Hello and welcome to the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. I'm your host, Jack, and today my guest is Jamey Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. How you guys doing? Are you spending time with family and friends over the holidays? I sure hope so. Personally, I'm here in Eagle River, Alaska, the town where I grew up, and I'm having a great time with my family and friends. However, as you can probably tell from my voice, I'm feeling a little under the weather. That's okay though. We'll make it through this introduction. I wouldn't dare miss a podcast, and I have a great conversation to present to you. Like I said, the guest is Jamey Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. You may be familiar with Jamey from his 2016 mega hit, Scythe. His design is getting all kinds of accolades this year, especially as we approach the 2016 end of the year discussions. The game is well deserving of this sort of deliberation and the success that it's getting, because it's this really elegant Euro-style game that tries to innovate on organic game conclusions. It has very interesting mechanics associated with moving pieces across the board and carrying resources with them. It's an approachable game, and it has a degree of combat in it, which is unusual for a Euro-style game, but it's handled in a very non-confrontational way is the best way that I can put it. It's not very punitive, and it's meaningful, but it's also extremely costly for all parties involved. If anything else, it presents a sort of Cold War feel to the game itself. It really operates on a different wavelength than most other games that are available on the market right now. So I was very interested to talk with him about his design going into Scythe, his inspirations, the challenges, as well as talking about some of his other games that he's co-designed, including Viticulture, Euphoria, and upcoming projects by Stonemaier Games. Fortunately, when Jamey and I talked, I was feeling a ton better, and I didn't have to talk in such a low register. But first, of course, as always, we have some business to attend to. What's going on cardboardherald.com. So first off, we posted a review for Eldritch Horror. Now, in an eventual Reviewers Digest podcast that we do, I'll get a little bit more into this one, but I went out on a limb and wrote a narrative intro to this review. So I'm very proud of it, but it was also exercising muscles that I haven't used in a long time. Please check that out and give me some feedback. Let me know what you thought of it, and if that was an intriguing way to approach a heavily thematic game like Eldritch Horror. Also, this is so, I guess, crazy to me that in a few short months of working on the Cardboard Herald, I'm able to reach out to people who have made a meaningful impact on my life through their art, through their creativity, and have them respond to me and answer meaningful questions. One such person is Melissa Benson, one of the original 25 artists from Magic the Gathering. Now, Magic was a huge game in my personal development, both as a person and as a gamer. Melissa Benson drew some of the iconic creatures from that original set, including Nightmare and Shivan Dragon. I don't know about you, but when I opened Magic cards, I couldn't care less about the abilities, the strengths, the weaknesses of everything involved. I cared about how cool that artwork was, and Shivan Dragon was the biggest, baddest, meanest mother that you could possibly put on the battlefield, and man, did that make an impact on me. So Melissa agreed to do a written interview, which is now on the site. Cardboard Herald gets the scoops. So please check that out. So new games, got a chance to play a couple new games. We played Captain Sonar, got 2 games of that in. It was a lot of fun. We played 2 different ways, one in real time and one turn-based. It was a 6-player game, 3 versus 3, and it worked beautifully both ways. All 6 of us that were playing, this was our first chance to play the game, and within 2 turns, because we started with the turn-based operation, everyone knew exactly how their role worked and how they were going to play the game. And that's a rare thing for something with so many moving parts. It was awesome that it felt natural, it felt intuitive, and bottom line, it felt fun. It was so joyous to narrowly escape your opponent, and it was even better to be able to locate your opponent. So I want to play it a bunch more, but please do check out Captain Sonar. So far, that has been one of my favorite new games from 2016. The other new thing that I got a chance to play was Seven Wonders Duel, which thank you to friend of the site, Dan, who provided that to us for Christmas. So thank you, Dan, for that early Christmas gift. I've only played it once so far, and I can't wait to play it again. I'm a big fan of Seven Wonders, but one of the flaws that it has, or I guess it's not a flaw, one of the shortcomings that it has is that it is a 3 and up player game. I know there are a lot of people that like the 2-player variant to Seven Wonders, but to me, it's just too much management to keep up with, and operating a dummy player just never really feels that fun in a game, or at least to me as a gamer. But my wife, Christina, and I got a chance to play that, in fact, earlier today, and the tension was great. I loved seeing the shield march back and forth on the war track. It was so genius to set up the drafting in a pattern that locks out cards, because all of a sudden you're making very, very strategic decisions about which card do I pull right now, not just because I want to take it for myself or not because I want to deny it from my opponent, but also what do I want to unlock that my opponent will find as a viable path to victory against me. And I also liked that there's 3 different victory conditions for the game. It is very cool. The last thing that I wanted to touch on about the site is that next week is going to be the final episode of the year. And so we're going to do something a little bit different for that episode. We're going to do kind of a variety show, end of the year type of thing, where some friends of the site are going to come on. We're going to have our Pandemic Legacy spoiler cast with our Pandemic Legacy group. We will definitely label it and make sure everyone's aware that's going to happen. And we're going to have it at the end of the episode. So that way, if you're still interested in having a spoiler-free Pandemic Legacy time, you can listen to the first half and we'll let you know when you need to turn it off. That would be a great opportunity to answer some questions. So if you have questions for the Cardboard Herald, for me, for Christina, for Hemingway, for anyone involved, please email cardboardherald@gmail.com or tweet to us at cardboardherald. Then we're going to start 2017 back up again with the normal interviews that you've come to expect from the Cardboard Herald with Ted Alspach, designer of Suburbia, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and co-owner of Bezier Games. So I can't wait for what the new year is going to have for us, and I will be talking with you about all kinds of fun stuff next week. So with all of that out of the way, let's get to this fantastic conversation with Jamey Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. Jamey Stegmaier, welcome to the Cardboard Herald. And it takes absolutely all of my strength of will to not call you Jamey Stonemaier. And I imagine that's got to happen a lot for you.
It does happen. The origin of that, in case you don't know, or your listeners don't know, is that my co-founder is named Alan Stone, and my last name is Stegmaier. So we combined our names into a German-sounding amalgamation to create our company name.
Suddenly, that makes perfect sense. You're the face of the company, though. I don't see Alan getting out there as much. He co-designed a lot of the games, but he's also co-owner of the company.
Yeah, he's co-owner, co-founder. He's definitely behind the scenes. This is my full-time job, and it's just a very small part of what he does. But I'm very grateful that he helped me build the company.
Well, that's awesome. Well,
yeah.
As far as the company's going, I mean, it is going fantastically, I gotta imagine. In 2016, with it wrapping up, how does it feel to have the hottest release of the year?
At this point, it feels really good. I mean, there are definitely ups and downs with a big release like that, but it seems like a lot of people are having fun with Scythe, and I love that. I love that people are having fun with something that I created. That means the world to me. Have you gotten to play it, Jack?
I've played it once. Unfortunately, supply chains up to Alaska are a little hard, and I swore off Kickstarter for a while because I was kind of getting ready for this project, ultimately. And I thought, it's kind of getting into weird boundaries if I'm backing Kickstarters and that kind of stuff. So when I can get my hands on it, I'm expecting to do a review. I loved it so far, what I got to play.
How is the gaming community up there?
Well, there's a lot of people getting together, playing board games at people's houses. I mean, it's an isolating atmosphere. So, especially during the winter, you have a lot of people who just come on over, we'll make dinner and play some games. And that's really amongst my circle of friends what we tend to do. There are some bigger gaming groups, and there's actually been some really dedicated CCG groups around Alaska. In fact, I was part of the Legend of Five Rings super dedicated tournament group that we would play like 3 tournaments a week. It was ridiculous.
Self-hosted tournaments or official tournaments?
Sanctioned tournaments. They would send us promos for all these tournaments that we would play in the back of a... we did it at Candy's Cleaners in Eagle River, Alaska, this laundromat. We would move all the equipment out, and then we would set up tables and just play organized tournaments there, and then send a couple people down to Gen Con every year. It was pretty awesome.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
That's a format that I haven't explored, like the tournament format. Do you think that was to have that format in place, was that beneficial for AG? Were they making a profit off of that format, do you think?
In that case, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think for Legend of the Five Rings, tournaments were the lifeblood of the game. Pretty much, if you played Legend of the Five Rings, L5R, you were expected to participate in tournaments. It was part of the scene. Magic had a much more casual scene, Yu-Gi-Oh!, those type of things. But for L5R, they did a really interesting thing where they tied the story that would be written for the game to the results of tournaments. And I think that just engaged players a lot more. And I imagine it fueled sales, and I mean, they had to send out a whole lot of promos and stuff, but I think the dedication into the fan base resulted in a lot of loyalty to the company and sales ultimately. But I don't know. I mean, at this point, Fantasy Flight owns L5R, so who knows if it was in the end profitable for them. Right.
Do you think they'll continue to play with that new version, the LCG version?
Well, I've been out of the scene for, since moving to Juneau, so I don't know, 6 or 7 years is probably the last time that I played any sort of serious L5R, but I'm definitely going to check it out when they release the
FFG. I imagine it's going to be an LCG. I have no idea. I mean, they've been sitting on it for like a year, so who knows what they're doing. They're probably just doing more Star Wars stuff and consolidating IPs so no one else can compete with them.
Right.
Have you considered doing any tournament stuff for any Stonemaier games? I mean, I know there's other, box board game companies that do tournaments.
Yeah, the organized play thing is, I guess that encompasses tournaments and other types of play, and it's intriguing to me, but I haven't quite figured out the benefits yet, other than people having fun with a game, which is the overall goal for me. I want people to have fun, but I also need to make a profit to stay in business. And so every now and then, someone who loves a certain game will come to me and say, "Hey, I want to run a local tournament." And in those cases, I always say, "Yeah, do it, test it out, let me know what brings in people, what's fun." Try to get a gauge on whether or not it actually results in more copies being sold, or if it's just people who already own the game playing the game with each other, which again is fun, but that's not something that I need to support with free products. And so usually with those tournaments, I send a pack of metal coins or something to the winner. It's not a big loss if it doesn't help me at all, and it's something just a little extra fun for them to do. So it's something I kept my eye on, but I'm hesitant to move to a big organized structure.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. It could just be the format doesn't quite flow for being a big, large-scale release, single game at a time. Because with tournaments, with LCGs or other collectible games, it seems like the reason why you want to foster that environment is that drives people to buy the new, more powerful cards. And if you're not selling the new, more powerful cards, then, maybe that's not worth it in the long run. But it's really cool it's really cool that you support the local tournaments. Have you ever attended any local tournaments or anywhere in your area?
For my games, the only local tournament for my games was one that we hosted a couple of years ago at a convention in St. Louis, and so I ran that, and that was fun. I haven't attended any of the other ones. And for other games, I used to play Magic. I play Magic online now every now and then, but 10 years ago, I would attend a Magic tournament in person every now and then and just get destroyed. But it was kind of just fun to, build the deck and get excited and go to that type of environment. So I get why people have fun with it.
Yeah, that's the best. I miss going to tournaments, and every now and then, a local shop here will have a sealed deck tournament, and I go, man, if I had time and I didn't have a kid that I got to make dinner for right now, this would be the best. My older brother was way more into Magic, and occasionally just he and I would do our own little, let's do some sealed deck at home or do some drafting at home. That was a lot of fun.
Drafting Magic is one of the most fun things ever, I think. And that other games that have drafting, where you open a pack, like that opening of the pack, and then passing it, so you get to open essentially another pack missing a card. There's nothing better than that. It's so much fun.
Yeah, well, that's that feeling, the endorphin rush as you open up a pack of anything that's really exciting, and I think by design, it's made that way to maybe almost fetishize the experience of open it up and, oh God, there's a foil. Oh, it's a common. Okay, well, still cool.
Yeah.
At least it has cool artwork. That actually kind of gets back to some of your games, because I had that experience in opening Viticulture, and when I got a chance to play Scythe, being able to just open this box, and the copy that I got to play was the super fancy deluxe edition with the metal coins and the deluxe resource bits and everything, and it was just like opening this treasure chest. I had no idea how to play the game yet, and I was just like, oh, what is this piece? And oh, these little barrels. I don't care what my objective is in this game. I just need to collect barrels. That's all I care about, is these little pieces here. So I guess, why is it so important to your company to emphasize on the high quality components, like at a higher expense? Like your games could be made cheaper, but even the retail base copy of Scythe and Viticulture, Euphoria and Tuscany, they're all gorgeous games with great pieces.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot to me. We do put a lot into that look and the feel. I think there are many different answers, but I think the main answer for me is one of the reasons I love games is that tactile experience of picking up unique, weird pieces or beautiful custom pieces and moving them around. And just that tactile part of it is huge to me. I don't think this is just me. I love beautiful things. And so if there are many games on my shelf from other companies that are just so beautiful, and I like to get that beauty on the table and experience it firsthand. So when I make a game, I push our budget to the limits to enhance every component possible. And I definitely tried to do that with Scythe, with Euphoria, with Viticulture, with Between Two Cities even, which is a very, very simple tile laying game. We put in these special wooden city tokens that don't really need, they could easily be cubes, but it just adds a little bit of extra flavor and beauty to the game that I really, really like.
Yeah, it adds a certain, I don't know, I guess sophistication or polish. Like, have you played Castles of Mad King Ludwig?
It's my number one favorite game. Yeah.
It's your number one favorite game?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm actually talking with Ted Alspatch tomorrow, so
no way.
I'll pass that on to him. I'm sure you've had well documented conversations with him to let him know that. But
no, I've never interacted with Ted. Feel free to pass it on because I really that's yeah. I'd love to talk to him about it someday.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that first player token could have been just some cheap little tile. It could have been just a small castle with some little turrets on top, but instead it's this glorious, beautiful castle with a spire on the side, and it's just this evocative piece that sets up the whimsical tone for the game right away. And all it is just a first player token. Like it has so little functionality, but I think it engages the player in the game much quicker, and it gives you an affection for the game that you wouldn't have normally. And I think that your games have that same quality. For example, inside again, when you're moving the pieces because resources stay on the board, I think that's genius because it gives you a reason to pick up and take ownership of your pieces. Not only does it have an effect on the gameplay because you can take those resources from players, but it makes you invested in those pieces more than if you just had them sitting off to the side of your player board. Was that a consideration at all when coming up with that mechanic?
I have to admit the idea of encouraging players to actually touch the pieces in that way hasn't occurred to me until now. So I'm glad you said that. The main reason was to unabstract something that's often abstracted in games, which is when you gain resources, it goes off to this little side pile. And I wanted to unabstract that and show the location of where it was made. It's like your farmer is out there in the middle of nowhere making it. He's not immediately sending it back to you. So I wanted it was mainly for that kind of thematic reason that I wanted to do it. And it became, as you said, a mechanical reason as well. So that if you build up resources, then you start to, how games often have something to prevent you from building up a ton of resources. Maybe they'll give you a limit or something like that. I wanted something more organic where if you do it inside, players are going to come attack you and try to take those resources away.
You mentioned earlier that this is your full-time gig now, Stonemaier Games. How long have you been full-time?
It's actually almost to the day. It's been, what is it, 2016? I think it's 2 years? No, 3 years. Yeah, 2013 was when I started. Yeah, December 2013. So it's been almost 3 years to the day.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what was the secret life beforehand?
Well, I basically had two kind of long-term, 4 or 5 year jobs after college. I worked at a book publishing project management company, and then I worked at a university near here, Washington University in St. Louis. I worked there for I think maybe 5 or 6 years, and then this this endeavor, Stonemaier, kind of started bleeding into that until it got to the point where I just couldn't do both at the same time.
And how scary was it to go into Stonemaier full time?
Well, I waited as long as I could. I'm very risk averse, so I waited as long as I could that it wasn't as scary as it needed to be. Like, I saved up a decent amount of money so that if everything failed, I would have about 8 months to a year of a cushion there, a tight cushion, but it would have worked out. But I made sure to deliver the last Kickstarter. I delivered Euphoria around that time, and so I knew that there wasn't going to be like a huge problem with delivering it, because that's often where like a lot of things go wrong with a Kickstarter. So I avoided that risk as well. But absolutely, I mean, it was still to get rid of a secure job and move on to one that was solely contingent upon me was pretty scary.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Or I guess I could imagine as I'm doing this more and more. And I just started this a few months ago. And I love my day-to-day job, but, oh man, this is taking a lot of time. I mean, I'm not making any money from a podcast, but the dream of being the Mark Maron of board games someday is out there.
Yeah.
So are you risk adverse when you're playing games as well?
That's a good question. It depends somewhat on the game, but I play a lot of Euro games, and I would say I really like in Euro games to try different paths and like push all the buttons from game to game or even within a game. Like, I'll try a path for a few minutes and then try a different path for a few minutes just to see how it feels, how it goes. So I would say maybe I'm not as risk averse when I play games, because usually that rarely benefits my long-term strategy in those games. What about you? How are you in games?
I don't know. It depends. If I've been winning a lot recently, then I'll tend to try different strategies or see if I can, I don't know, make the more interesting results come true or set my own benchmarks. You know, I wonder how well I can do with this strategy, fully knowing I'm not necessarily going to win with this, but I can lean into it because I've played the optimum strategy enough times. The hope is that I have a game where there's tons of viable strategies and I haven't discovered an optimum strategy that I'm going to get into.
Yeah.
And you know, ultimately, it also depends on who I'm playing with. I mean, I have my little brother who, if we're playing Splendor, then, you know, I'm going to not necessarily go easy or not take good moves, but I'm going to go, you know what, I'll just see if I can save up for big things in order to see if I can just scoop early points. But if I'm playing with my wife, who's fiercely competitive and just kicked my butt at Concordia yesterday, then I'm going to be, how do I get exactly where I want to go? I may change up the strategies a little bit, but I usually play to have fun. Do you, when you're trying different tactics or strategies in a game, do you find that you're trying to take apart the game mentally when it's not your own, so that way you can understand its design more?
It's always on the back of my mind, at the very least. I'm usually looking for moments of joy and moments and interesting decisions, opportunities for interesting decisions. And part of that's for me as a designer. Part of that is because I have a YouTube channel where I talk about my favorite game mechanism in a game. So that's always in the back of my head, like, when am I going to record about this later? And just talking through it on that channel usually helps me as a designer as well. So it comes full circle there.
What is the earliest memory that you have of achieving that kind of joy during a board game or a tabletop game?
The earliest memory? Man. So I played a fair number of games when I was growing up. I think started when I was 6, 7, 8, around that age.
Did you grow up in St. Louis?
No, I grew up in Virginia. And my parents exposed me to games pretty early.
Rural Virginia?
No, I would say suburban Virginia. And my uncle has a farm up there that's probably, I don't know if it's exactly in that area, but it's about 20 minutes outside of DC. And you're right, it feels nothing like an urban, like it's just farmland.
Yeah, same thing outside of San Francisco, too. It's like nothing but sheep farms as soon as you drive 10 minutes out of Sausalito. It's crazy.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't think that either. I view California as a beach with cities next to it. But you're right, I'm sure there are plenty of rural areas like that.
Yeah, right outside of the tech capital of the world. But anyway, I interrupted your story. So as a kid, you grew up in Virginia, and you played a bunch of games growing up?
Yeah, with my family, I'd played chess, Millbourne, a game called Labyrinth, Scotland Yard.
Wait. The Amazing Labyrinth, where you had, like, shifting...
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, my God, that's the best game. I love that game. I have it upstairs, reserved for as soon as my son's old enough to play that.
That's awesome. That's my parents are in the process of moving right now, and they've asked us, like, what things do we want to keep? And when I go home for Christmas, I'm going to get my old copy of Labyrinth and bring it back. Because it's actually, for such a simple game and an older game, there are interesting choices in it. It's not a luck-based game really at all.
No, not at all. It's quite genius to go back and play it. I love that game. And that's why I'm keeping it, is because I'm like, man, I am so much more looking forward to this than Chutes and Ladders, so I'm not getting rid of my copy.
Yeah, I look forward to doing that at Christmas. My mom did tell me that there's a piece missing, which I think will be difficult to replace at this point. Unless Ravensburger still makes it.
Well, I think it's still in production. The art style is much more sophisticated, which maybe is to its detriment. You know, I like the old aesthetic on the game. Let me know. I may actually have a bonus copy upstairs. I may be able to find you a missing piece for the Amazing Labyrinth.
That's awesome.
So, what else did you play growing up?
Well, let's see. I got to games like Scotland Yard, which remains. That's another one that I'm hoping they still have, so I can take it, because that's. Despite like the modern renaissance of hidden movement games, I think that is still my favorite hidden movement game. I don't even like the other ones all that much. Have you played Scotland Yard?
Probably my first gaming memory is sitting on my mom's lap in New Delhi, India, with my older brother, and she and I were trying to capture him as what Mr. X is. That
Mr. X, yeah.
So I haven't played it much since then, but I do remember the game, and it made an imprint on me.
Yeah, that's awesome that it went all the way back for you to New Delhi, too. Did you guys buy the game there, or did you bring it? Did your family bring it with them?
I think we bought it there. At the time, I mean, there's nothing but... Well, there's tons of British influence in India. And so we had all kinds of European stuff. We had Asterix comics from France that were translated into English. We had tons of British television shows, and we had Scotland Yard. So I imagine that we bought it over there. And we could even buy G.I. Joe, the International Hero, I think is what he was called on the packaging there. It was something like that, so it wasn't the American hero when you bought it abroad.
That's great, because G.I. Joe, isn't that name like inherently American?
Hey, it sold copies over there.
Right. That's great.
I keep interrupting you. I'm a terrible interviewer.
No, I don't have a good story about Scotland Yard in particular. I just remember playing it. I think that was around the time I got into Magic a little bit too, as like an early teenager, and then I didn't play. Well, actually, there was one other game that my mom showed me in the recent photos. It was like an early Ameritrash game, some like medieval like quest, Key to the Kingdom.
Okay,
yeah. I want to look at it because I remember the art just being really like full-on fantasy evocative art, and I really liked that. But I don't think there was a lot of choices in the game. It was just like moving around and collecting stuff. Mm-hmm. But I had fun with that.
Okay, and so you played a bunch of Magic. Did that take you through high school? Did you branch out into any sort of other gaming, RPGs, anything like that?
RPGs are a gaping hole in my gaming portfolio. I played the Star Wars RPG a few times as a teenager, but not since then. And I kind of wish I had, and I still want to, because I want to be a part of a group that just fully gets into it, and they're part of that magic circle of pretending they're in that world. I feel like if even one person's not into it, that could like destroy the whole environment. Have you played any RPGs? Would you recommend any?
Well, D&D 5th edition is a great entry point, but I didn't play RPGs growing up. I had the books, and I loved the books. I loved pouring through them. I loved the stats and that kind of stuff, but for me, it was mainly video games growing up. And then, of course, Magic and a couple board games that we had. And it wasn't until the last 5 or 6 years or so that I started playing RPGs. And I played a little bit of Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, but 5th is probably the most accessible, least intimidating thing. It's designed from the ground up to be approachable to a lot of different people. There's not a ton of either excessively violent or overly scantily clad babes running around in the artwork there, so it just looks like a product that's more approachable to people. And the game itself really unfolds in a, hey, if you just want this to be a storytelling improv session with a little bit of rules, we got that in here for you. Pouring through rule books for different data tables and that kind of stuff, it's also there for you. So I think that's a great entry point, but I don't know, there's a million RPGs out there. I just go with one that sounds interesting. There's Call of Cthulhu with its madness, or I think there's one where you play with a Jenga tower to represent your sanity, and if you cast a spell, you build another block on top of the tower, and if you break the tower, then you go insane. There's all kinds of cool stuff in RPGs.
I heard about one recently I think it's called 10 Candles. Have you heard of this one?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know the story or the world, but there's something like at the beginning of the session, you light, I guess, 10 candles, if I have that name right. You light 10 candles of different lengths, I think, and or maybe you light some of them and then you light more. But basically, as a candle burns out, that means something in the space of the game. And so it triggers something, probably something bad, and it kind of keeps the game moving along, so that you also have a time limit based on this. I just think that would be a really cool environment to play with a candle that actually means something as you play. Yeah,
that's ridiculously creative. It not only, again, kind of like your pieces or the movement of pieces along the board and scythe, it enhances the immersion in the game, but it also has a function within the game, which is really cool.
Yeah. I like that combination of immersion and function, yeah.
So you're playing Magic, and then at some point you must have picked up a Euro game or any type of game, and it just completely changed your perception of what gaming could be. When did that happen?
Yeah, well, as for many people, it was with Settlers of Catan.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe a year or two after college, I don't think I had played more than like a game here and there. I don't think I had played a game other than a little bit of Magic here and there. I hadn't played many board games for a while, just because I didn't know any other adults who played them anymore. And then somebody happened to invite me over to the Settlers, and that was like the only game we played for a while. And then we brought Agricola into it, and then that really opened up everything. The combination of the two. You said you played Settlers too? That got you back into it?
Yeah, that got me away from playing things like Magic and L5R. Certainly. Settlers was the thing that we really bonded over, my wife and I, when we first moved to Juneau, which I don't know how much you know about Alaska, but Juneau, even though it's our capital, it's completely isolated. There's no roads in or out of Juneau. There's ferry systems and planes, but it's effectively an island because we're surrounded by water on one side and mountains on the other. So all of our family, all of our friends are elsewhere, and we just had a friend that we met here who played Settlers. And I actually worked at comic shops and game stores before, and I would sell it, but I didn't get a chance to play it because, again, I was like, board games, I'm past that. I'm into CCGs, dog. And we ended up playing that, and it was approachable for my wife. It was fun. It was easy to clean up, and you didn't have to spend $1 million on it. And that was really our gateway. And we played a ton of that. And then I think just slowly other things started creeping in, Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne. And, as you do, someone breaks out Small World, and it's the most complicated game you've ever seen in your life. And you're like, oh my God, this is going to take 10 hours. And, there's a million rules. And by now, Small World is like, wow, that's a real lightweight game that we can just break out and have at each other in half an hour.
And have you ever gone back and looked at the Settlers rulebook? Just now that you've known how to play for years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think I've done that in a couple of years.
Because I did that recently. I wanted to look at it, and it actually is a decently long rulebook for a gateway game. I think it's about 10 or 12 pages, maybe even longer. And it just, for me, someone taught me Settlers, and I wonder if it's just there's so many copies out there, and so many people know how to play it that most people don't ever even look at the rule book because it's just one person passing on those rules to another.
The Monopoly effect.
The Monopoly, exactly. Yeah.
I wonder how many incorrectly played games are going on as we speak because someone failed to mention, you break up the longest road by placing a settlement in the middle or something like that. Little obscure rules like that. Okay, so Agricola made a big impact on you. What about Agricola was the game?
Part of it was, the worker placement. That was my first worker placement game, and that was, it was just, now it's in so many games, so many of my games too, that it just seems normal. But at that first play, it just seems so simple. I place a worker and I get that thing, and then the tension involved where I don't want someone else to take the action that I want, and then the accumulation of things from round to round if people didn't pick an action. I loved that. I loved having your own private player mat that no one else could touch. That's your thing that you can control. I loved that. It's just I really, really love the game. I think it's changed for me over time because I realized how much the game is about feeding, and I don't get it. I found that I'm more excited about games that constantly reward players rather than punishing them for not doing something. But I still admire that design so much.
Yeah, my wife hates Agricola. She respects Agricola. She will always say, "Oh, that is a really well-designed game." I hate that thing. I never want to play it because to her, it's a game that that limits her possibilities, and she hates that. She doesn't like being able to see all of the potential, but know that that's not what she should be doing to win. Instead, she should be focused on feeding her family, and she likes Caverna a little bit better. It's a little less punishing.
I was going to ask if she's played Caverna because that does it, or makes it easier at least.
That one stayed in our collection. We got Caverna.
Okay. Cool.
So that first copy of Agricola that you played, did it have the wooden sheep and cows and all that kind of stuff, or was it just cubes?
It was just cubes. Okay. Yeah.
So, I was wondering, for me, again, kind of like your games, when I play Agricola or Caverna, I sit there and I just look at the dogs and I look at the sheep and go, man, this is what I play games for, is these cool little bits that are involved in a really well-designed thing. I'm happy to pay a premium when I'm getting a really cool product. And that's not to say that there aren't really well-designed or beloved I guess, I don't want to say cheap production value, but lesser production value games. But that actually means a lot to me as a gamer, to have pieces that I can admire, and help with the theme. You know, I'm the type of person that with Lords of Waterdeep, I bought the custom little, the little cube guys in order to go with that. Back when it was just some dude with a laser cutter making those. I think they're mass produced at this point. Back on track here. With Scythe, this is your first Stonemaier game that is a solo Jamey Stegmaier design, right?
In the public eye, yes.
Okay.
For Viticulture and Euphoria, very much. I mean, I was very much the lead designer for it, and Alan was essentially a lead playtester. So he's always there if I need to playtest something, usually early in the process, and then throughout blind playtesting, we'll come in and play a few times to make sure it's on the right path. But for Scythe, I think we actually had the conversation before Scythe. I was like, I want to acknowledge what you do, Alan, in helping these games come to life, but it does mean something to me that this is, that I'm not telling people something that's not true, which is Alan is not really the designer of these games. I don't think it was about ego, my own ego. I don't think so. It was just more like accuracy. I'd rather be accurate. So Scythe is the first one that I put my own name on the box, and only my own name, but that pattern was the case for all of our games so far.
Sure. Does Alan have any games on the horizon that are his specific design, where you're just the consultation or play tester?
I was excited about that possibility early on in the company's evolution, and he tried, but he realized pretty quickly that it's just not something that he can maintain the excitement about. Sure. So, and he has two kids. He's married. He has other jobs, and so it's just not something that he wants to spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, and that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And that's an achievement, and that's got to be something that I imagine, based off of the narrative I'm building of you in your mind, having both the risk and success, being able to take credit for that, and again, not for ego's sake, but to say, hey, whatever happens on this, this was something that from the ground up was my design. And did that feel like an achievement or something important to you, that it was not just successful? I mean, of course it's important that the game's successful. That's your livelihood. But was it important to you that it was successful on your name alone?
When we had that conversation, it was. I think it's kind of hard to describe. Maybe the best way I could describe it is there was one of our games was nominated for some award, either in France or Italy at some point, a couple of years ago. I can't remember if it was Viticulture or Euphoria. And we were both nominated as different designers. Like, we were nominated for, like, Designer of the Year for this game, but separately. Like, he was nominated and I was nominated. And while I'm very happy that he had his name on that list, it would not have been accurate at all for the award for him to have won. And that even saying that comes out weird, because like I really don't care about awards. I don't care about that recognition at all. But to people who maybe looked at that list and thought, oh, Alan Stone, that's cool that he's designing games, and Alan just doesn't design games. Like, it's just not an accurate thing. So,
he's a play tester, and he's also a business owner.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It makes total sense to me. I don't think that you need to feel weird about saying that either. I think it's a matter of credit where credit's due. Maybe he can be an executive producer.
That would actually be very accurate. He is an executive. I like that. And his name is, like, the Stone in Stonemaier is Stone, so his name is definitely on the box.
Yeah. So
I would say with Scythe, the thing that was much more important was that Jacob's name, or Jakub Rosalski, the artist, that his name was on the box, both as the artist and the world builder, which was, I know, very important to him and very important to me, that this game, this world that he had started to create, and that he ended up creating the vast majority of it, that he had that recognition on the box. And it kind of made me realize all too much that I don't credit our artists well enough on the box, even though their art is a huge part of every game. So since then, for like reprints and for all future games, the artist's name is going out there just as big as my name, or the designer's name, just because artists have such a huge impact.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I'm so happy to hear that. That's, to me, they're the unsung hero of games, really. I mean, going back to the original Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering, I mean, think about the first time that you picked up a handful of Magic cards. What drew you to the game wasn't the text or the idea that you're fighting with them. It was these incredible pictures that you're looking at, and that holds true now with board games too. And you have a knack for picking absolutely incredible artists. So with Scythe, did that start with just seeing one of his images, and was that the genesis of the theme?
Yeah, I was browsing a site called Kotaku that does a weekly segment called, I think it's usually weekly, called it's like Fine Art or something, or Artist of the Week, where one of their editors will find an artist and post their work online, and so it had this a series of like 8 or 10 images from Jakob's 1920s world, and that just immediately I was like, wow, like this. I didn't know it at the time, but I was like, this is what I've been looking for. I want a world, and I want to put a game in that world. And that was, so I reached out to him right away and asked if he would, if he was interested in that idea.
That's hilarious, because I remember that exact same Kotaku article, and I remember thinking, this is insane. This is gorgeous. Like, this is something that, to me, needs to exist. And I was hoping things like what is the new Wolfenstein, the New Order, would kind of scratch some of that itch. Alternate histories where there's mechs and yet also early 20th century architecture, that kind of stuff. And it blew me away, and I was so surprised to hear that a board game, my favorite hobby, that someone was designing a game around that. So how much did the theme influence the mechanics? Like, did you have, when you design a game, do you have mechanics kind of floating around in your mind, and then you're looking for a theme that would be applicable? Or do you start with a theme and say, what is this game?
Usually when I'm brainstorming, it's a mix of the two rather quickly. And sometimes it'll swing one way or the other. So if there's, during the design process, if there's a theme and I can't figure out what to do with that theme, then I'll look towards, I'll either think of a mechanism, or I'll look at my backlog of ideas for mechanisms, or it'll swing the other way, where I'll have an idea for the mechanism, and I'll kind of poke at the different themes of the game to see, like, does this actually fit? Could this work in this game? And I cut the things that don't work and I add the things that don't. But with Scythe in particular, most things started with a theme, or they always came back to the theme. Or like for the entire design process, I had not the wall, like the wall behind you can actually see some art back there, but the wall that I'm facing right now was just covered in printouts of all the work that Jakob had done. And so whenever I struggled with a mechanism or some aspect of the game, I just stare at this wall and think, like, how does this make me feel? And how am I not capturing that in the game? And how can I pull that into the game?
What was the most challenging thing about designing the game?
I would say combat was actually the most difficult part to figure out. And this wall of art ended up really helping with that, because combat went through stages where it was a very big part of the game, and then it was very small, and then it was somewhere in between. And especially in the stages where it was a huge part of the game, I would look at the wall, and eventually it hit me, by looking at this wall of art, eventually it hit me that there isn't actually a lot of fighting in Jakob's art. The mechs are there. There's clear evidence that battles have happened and that battles will happen. But it's not a world of a lot of active warfare. And so once I realized that, I was like, okay, well that's what I've been missing here. Like the threat of combat, the threat of something happening is much bigger than all out war in this game. And that really helped me tone it down and kind of be okay with the fact that at that point combat was not a huge part of the game.
Yeah, that actually panned out in the one game that I got to play. We actually only had one combat, and it was right at the end, but it was the almost Cold War-esque impending threat of combat that affected everything that we did in the game, knowing, if I go here, I leave myself vulnerable. So I'm not turtling, but I'm definitely playing defensive because I'm worried about the threat of combat, but it never actually happened until the very end. And that's something I admire and appreciated. I like games with a lot of conflict and a lot of combat. Some of my favorite games are things like Eclipse or Game of Thrones board game, that kind of thing. But in this, immediately I latched onto the Euro elements of the game. And so if there was too much combat, I think it would take away from the design of the game. So I think you made a really smart choice on that. Do you find that having the mechs present, or just having combat be an aspect of the game at all, makes people confused at all when they go into the game? Have you had any feedback on that?
Yeah, in two different ways. One is people who are just kind of confused when only one combat happens in the game. And I think what it is that the box art does show mechs in combat. Mm-hmm. Whereas in most of the rest of the art in the game, they're not in combat. And that didn't hit me until after it went to print. And after that box image had been seen by millions of gamers worldwide, and it just was the box image. But I can definitely see how people could be confused by that. I hope at this point that the information out there about the game is prevalent enough that, and even on the back of the box, that it's clear that it's not an all-out combat game. The other kind of discussion that happens a lot is whether or not it is a 4X game, because on the back of the box I do call it a 4X game. I have my reasons for thinking it fits into a 4X definition, even though it's a little different than the perception of what a 4X game is. But so I understand both sides of that argument. That some people don't think it is, some people do. I think at this point, I don't know why some people care that much if it is exactly a 4X game or not. It just is what it is.
Hey, people hang their hats on labels,
Yeah.
You know what it's all about, whether it's records and talking about, is this really metal or is this hard rock, or talking about different bicycles or guitars or fishing rods, whatever it is, people like hanging on to labels. And some of the best games that I've played in the last 5 to 10 years have been the ones that really try to defy those labels or innovate on them, at least. What else do you do? You're so immersed in board gaming at this point. What else do you do for fun or to have some sort of meditative space outside of board game design?
There is some life outside board games, but it really is my main creative outlet and my main social outlet and my job. So it's a huge part of my life, and I'm glad that it is.
Sure.
But I guess the other, I absolutely love to read. I end every day with about 30 minutes to an hour of usually speculative fiction reading, novels.
What are you reading now?
Right now, I'm reading the latest book in the Expanse series. Have you heard of the Expanse series?
Yeah, Leviathan Wakes is the first book. Yeah. I actually have that on my Christmas wish list right now. Fingers crossed.
I hope you get it. It's one of the best science fiction series that I've ever read, and it's nice that it's actually paired with a really good TV show too now. Yeah, so that I love that series. And I used to play soccer a lot. Now I have less time to play soccer, but I still watch soccer and I watch football. I like watching certain sports as well. And movies. I absolutely love movies. I'm so excited about. You guys get Rogue One in Alaska?
Yeah. We get all the movies. I have I had a Walmart right down the street, but the Walmart closed, so I don't have a Walmart anymore. But we have everything that we need here, and Amazon brings us everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're actually going up to Anchorage, the big city where we're from, and we're probably going to see Rogue One and the new Harry Potter movie, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, in the big theater up there, because honestly, the theaters here in Juneau kind of suck. So yeah, we'll see it up there. I'm really excited. Are you excited for Rogue One?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to avoid the trailers as much as possible. I want to be surprised by it, but I'm going to see it on Saturday.
Okay, so you're a big movie guy. Have there been any movie influences on any of your board game designs?
I like that. I'm sure there have been. So the closest thing I can think of, this isn't quite an answer, but this is a form of media that's similar to movies that has affected one of my recent designs, which is there was a video game trailer that came out recently that was very cinematic. These video game trailers are so cinematic these days, and it was for the new Final Fantasy game. Yeah. And it's the trailer, there are many trailers for it. This one was one that's on TV where there's a group of kids kind of roaming through a forest, and they're fighting this big monster. Have you seen this commercial?
I haven't seen the trailer, but I'm playing the game in my off time.
Okay. I haven't played the game. I've just watched the trailer. But there's a moment in the trailer where like a kid stumbles and the monster's about to attack him, and his friend just puts up a sword to block the blow. And it's just like the perfect moment in a trailer, in a movie, when someone sacrifices for somebody else. And I'm designing a cooperative game right now. And when I saw that moment in that trailer, I was like, this is the moment I want to capture in this cooperative game. I want to give players the opportunity to, take the bullet for someone else and have that moment where you kind of defy logic to save your friend. So I'm sure there are real movies that have influenced it, but that's the thing that's been on my mind lately in this design I'm working on.
What's really interesting is that the Final Fantasy 15 is a really weird beast. I've kind of been a lapsed fan of the series, but it was really striking when they released a trailer with Florence and the Machine, the band, covering Stand By Me. And,
that's the song in this trailer. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So they probably put it in a bunch of different trailers, but the first trailer where I saw that, and they're just pushing a car along, and it's actually in the intro of the game as well, it made me think as I'm playing the game that either the song or the film Stand By Me, or a combination of the two, may have been their entire design inspiration or their muse for the game, because so much of the game is about friends picking up for each other's weaknesses, and not just I'm the warrior and I'm the mage, that kind of thing, but hey, when you're down, I'm going to be there for you, and even if it means my life or whatever it is. And it's such a tonal shift from other games that I've played, both in the series or period, that I almost wonder if they started there with one little moment or one little feeling of, how do we make an entire narrative that's this expansive game based off of one group of friends standing up for each other. And if that's what you're doing with a cooperative game, I'm there. I want to play Stand By Me, the Stonemaier adventure game.
I'll see if I can get the rights to the song.
Yeah, you might have to hire someone else to cover it, though.
Right.
Okay, so you got some hobbies outside of gaming. I know that you're a busy guy. You got a lot of things to do, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Just a couple quick more questions. Can you address what the mass drop ordeal was? Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah. What happened with mass drop was mass drop. I found out this was in very early August when Scythe was being released to retailers for the first time. So we had completed backer fulfillment, and we had like 5,000 copies for retail. It was very highly sought out, and I saw on Massdrop this site that I had some familiarity with. I had sold a product on Massdrop in the past, where Massdrop had. I can't remember if I came to them or they came to me, but it was a direct relationship between me and them for selling a product. I saw on Massdrop that they were selling Scythe, pre-orders for Scythe, for $49, and Scythe's MSRP is $80. And I think in hindsight, I overreacted in a couple different ways to this, but there was a big moment and a lasting moment of shock that a game that was like, it was the hottest selling game at the time. People were buying it at full MSRP or even higher. That a company kind of had this audacity to sell it for so much less than MSRP, and I was like, how am I? And at the time, I was pivoting my company to focus on relationships with distributors and retailers, and I was like, if a retailer goes to this page and sees that this company is selling it for $49, and doesn't at least get the impression that I am not against this, that is really bad for my relationship with these retailers and distributors.
Sure.
And I don't think I reacted as well as I could. First, I went to Massdrop privately and asked them what was going on. I asked them to take it down. I didn't really have a right to ask them to do that because they weren't buying it directly from me, but I asked them. And I said, at the very least, like, put something on this page to say that this isn't something that you're buying from me, that this is something that you're doing on your own through your other methods. And they didn't really respond to that. And so I started going on the comments, the boards. You may have seen Angry Jamey on these boards.
I think I might have seen you on Reddit or Board Game Geek or something. Yeah. So that was probably the big public relations mistake that I made, because instead of keeping it a private conversation, I made it very public. But I wanted people to know that I wasn't condoning it, that I didn't like that. From what you know, how do you feel about it? And you can say anything you want here, even if you disagree with what I did, because I don't think it was in any way the perfect situation for me or Massdrop. I think you had a human reaction to it.
Yeah.
And so I definitely don't hold you accountable to that. I mean, I don't know. If I were Massdrop, I probably would be like, oh, come on, why are you dragging this out here? This is probably a misunderstanding.
Right.
I deal with diplomatic relationships in my real world life all the time, and oftentimes when I make a mistake or something, if someone comes to me and they try to address it and I don't respond in enough time, and they talk to other people, it's like, oh, come on, just cut me some slack. But on the other hand, this isn't just shooting emails off to each other. This is dealing with a product, a very hot product. And yeah, you're totally right. The relationship with the game stores is incredibly important, and setting the tone for, is this a high quality product that is worth the retail that people are going to pay? And I struggle with that all the time as a consumer. I'm in Alaska. Everything is more expensive here in general. And while I want to support local businesses, unless I have a compelling reason, or the price that I can get online isn't so substantially low, then why would I buy a local?
Right.
And I think if people see that, hey, there's this mass drop for, what is it, $49?
Yeah.
If that's out there, and I know there's a potential for Scythe to be available at $49, am I going to buy a game at $80 or even whatever Amazon might sell it for, $65, $70? Or am I going to wait till it's $49 again? It stifles sales and not just your relationship with retailers. So I can totally see where you're coming from. Did you handle it the best way? I don't know, but you handled it probably the way that I would. So, I think the gaming community has forgiven any sort of angry Jamey remarks that may have been out there.
Many of them have. I think there are at least a few people, maybe a few hundred people who were part of that mass drop who that was maybe their first impression of me and their last, because it really turned them off, which is unfortunate. That's not how I want to present me or my company.
Well, that's why I asked the question, is because I think, I mean, I don't know, we're all figuring this out as we go along, right? Humans in general. And especially if you're taking on some creative endeavor or you're starting a business, this was your first encounter with something like this. And obviously it did become a somewhat controversial thing on the internet as far as board game controversies can go. And I think it's important that people hear a more comprehensive explanation of what happened. And that's why, honestly, that was one of the questions I was most looking forward to. Not that, and I didn't know all the ins and outs myself. So that makes total sense as you explain it. And again, you're pretty gracious in saying, maybe I shouldn't have handled it that way. So thank you.
When I came out of it, really, one of the things that, like, some people made some great points in that conversation about what mass drop really was, and I think some of them are accurate, some of them aren't. So basically, they were making the point that mass drop is more than just a deep discount store. They were presenting the idea that it's also a community of people. And I love the idea of building communities. I think it also is a deep discount store, and that is part of the community. But I think the two go hand in hand for mass drop users. But perhaps the biggest thing that came out of it is that people pointed out that there were other stores, online stores, that were selling Scythe at almost just as low of a price, and yet I wasn't reacting the same way to them. And that was hypocritical of me. And I went from that conversation, and I had much more civil conversations with those companies who did respond to me privately. We had great conversations about that. And it kind of made me appreciate the free market a little bit more. And it also made me kind of try to think of ways to reward companies, retailers in particular, who kind of respect the integrity of the prices that I pick for the games. And while in finding ways to reward their customers as well, if they are making that sacrifice of paying a little bit more for a game in a local store.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't credit, I guess, the enormous amount of understanding that has to go in setting a retail price, and they only look at what is the cost and what is the retail, and they don't look into, well, there's also ensuring that it's available at retailers for fair prices, that I can continue to produce this game. It's not just about my own profits, it's about being able to recoup the costs and put that into the company itself. There's so much more into it, and sometimes I think our community is a little short-sighted when it just looks at what is the bottom line, what is the cheapest price I can absolutely pay for this game. But then again, maybe I'm in a position of luxury where I can afford, an $80 game. And I'm sure that there are people out there that $49 for Scythe is going to be the only way that they could have played Scythe. So, that's a consideration too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's going to be on the horizon for Stonemaier Games? Do you have any projects that you're willing to talk about right now?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I'm spending the majority of my time on is a legacy village building game called Charterstone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been focusing my design time for pretty much the past year on. It's currently in blind playtesting. I just actually got the blind playtest results from the first wave of blind playtesting today, and so I'm kind of starting to digest that information. And that one, I don't have a release date for it, but it'll come out sometime in 2017, I hope.
Of course, you can't say a legacy game without being somewhat influenced by Pandemic Legacy at this point. Did you play through Pandemic Legacy?
The legacy mechanism, and full credit to Rob Davio for creating this mechanism, it is probably my favorite mechanism, my favorite modern game mechanism. And so, yeah, I played Risk Legacy was my favorite gaming experience of a few years ago. We did Pandemic Legacy a little over a year ago. We're in the middle of Seafall. I'm looking forward to Gloomhaven. I've done Time Stories, which isn't quite legacy. So yeah, this is a mechanism that I've tried to play everything I can get my hands on. Have you played any of these?
Yeah, I played some Risk Legacy. It was hard to keep a group together to play that. And then I ended up getting my friends who are huge Pandemic fans a copy of Pandemic Legacy for Christmas last year. And we, as a group, Sarah and Miko, they're a married couple, and then my wife and I would get together each month and we would play that month's missions. And so we just finished less than a week ago. So I'll have a spoiler cast. You know, they could care less about any of this podcast stuff, but, you know, stuck a microphone in the middle of the table and just what just happened, and, you know, talking about the entirety of the game and spoiling everything. So that was a hell of an experience. Unlike anything else that I've ever played. I don't know that I'd want to make legacy games my full investment of game time. You know, part of the appeal of games is being able to put something down that's predictable, that I can easily collapse and then put away and come back to and have a similar experience. I think that's what took me away from CCGs and moved me to big boxed board games. But having one running campaign game at a time, I think is something that I'm going to seek for the future. You know, play every couple of weeks or so and get another mission scratched off.
Well, Charterstone, kind of playing off what you were saying about campaign versus being able to take a game and reset it and have that, not the same experience, but starting over from scratch every game. Charterstone is designed to have both of those things, and that you do play through a campaign. It'll last usually 12 to 15 games, and the games aren't super long. They're maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And then when the campaign is over, you have a fully built village that is kind of a set thing, and you can continue to play it like a normal game. And not just you can do it, like the game is designed so that it is like a fully fledged unique game that you should continue to play if you want to.
That is a relief to hear. That's something that I definitely will be looking forward to. You got anything else? You mentioned a cooperative game on the horizon, just playing around with new ideas, or do you have anything a little bit more formed other than Charterstone?
That one is you're actually the first person I've talked to anyone about that one, because it's very new. I think it will happen, but I haven't actually played it yet, so I'm hesitant to you know, the first time I play a game, usually it's terrible, and I either know if there's something there or something isn't. So I'm not really sure with this one yet, but I'm excited about getting it to the table really soon and seeing if it actually is a game, and if I can get it to capture that moment that I talked about in the Final Fantasy trailer.
Sure.
And it has nothing to do with Final Fantasy. It's just that feeling of that moment.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And really, that's, you know, artistically or creatively, you know, those are the moments that inspire you. It's one small thing that you can kind of flesh out and blossom, whether it's the joy you felt playing a game as a kid, or it's discovering a new mechanism and seeing how you can, I guess, push the boundaries of what that is. I want one last chance to really talk about why, you don't have to justify Stonemaier Games in that it's a very, very popular company, and there are many, many people who are looking forward to every new release. But again, why is it so important to you to have these very high-end products? Is it something that is absent from the gaming industry, or was it part of the design philosophy? Even the little token boxes that you have, clearly something about this is important to you, to have really high-end quality, almost like coffee table discussion pieces.
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think for me it really comes back to finding ways to bring joy to people. And I don't think it's the case that there aren't other companies doing this. My shelf is filled with games and products that I think are beautiful and unique, and that I love playing. And I'm just glad that I can add a tiny little bit to this big, wonderful industry that I really, really love, and to bring those moments of joy to friends and families out there, which it's not super unique. I think there are lots of companies doing this, and I happen to be one of them, and I happen to be very fortunate that I can do this full time. As for the components, the components also play into that, but there are lots of companies that make beautiful components. I think maybe the unique thing about my company, if there is anything, is that it's kind of the Days of Wonder model, which actually inherently, through that analogy, does not make us unique. But Days of Wonder, publishes one game a year, and they put everything behind that game. And maybe they have an expansion or two or an accessory that they come out with, and that's what we do too. But I love that they put everything they have into one product and find the best way to share that with everyone. And I love that model compared to the model of putting out tons of stuff and hoping that a few things connect with people. And I say that I don't look down on that model at all. It's just not something that I'm interested in.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it has worked out fantastically, and I think the gaming world is better for it. And not only are they giant, beautiful games, but they're also incredibly elegant and skillfully made, both as a physical product, but also very well designed and very well thought out. So thank you so much for making these games. I have one last question for you. Speaking of the joy.
Uh-huh.
So Jamey Stegmaier is stuck on a desert island.
Yeah.
And there's one Stonemaier component that is magically transformed into candy. And you have an unlimited supply of it.
Okay.
What component, what piece do you choose to have as your single resource of food to eat for the rest of your life? And what does it taste like?
And are we assuming there are like vitamins in it that I could actually survive?
Well, it's the rest of your life, whether that's 10 days on this island or 10 years. I have no idea.
Right.
I set loose parameters here. I just want to know what kind of candy your pieces turn into.
Well, if somehow the nutrients were in it, it would. I don't have a game that has chocolate in it, but I love chocolate, and so it would have to be like a chocolate version of one of the pieces. And I wish I had something to show you. I know people can't see the camera right now, but I had, as gifts for people who have helped my company this year, we made chocolate viticulture coins that are wrapped in like the gold foil, I wish I could show it to you, but I've eaten them all because I like them so much. But I would have that. Like I would have our metal coins, but in chocolate form.
Okay. I think that's a great answer. It came out of playing Scythe and looking at the little wooden pieces and thinking, man, these are almost like, I bet they taste like root beer barrels if I
Oh, yeah.
had one of these. Well,
You should, next time you play, smell the miniatures, because for some reason, they smell like vanilla cupcakes. So if that was a choice too, I would eat the mini. I don't know why but they really have this strong vanilla smell to them.
I'm sure that's actually secretly by design. You want to have that on the shelf and just a little waft of vanilla scent, fresh baked, just like Mom used to make vanilla cupcakes. Oh, I gotta buy this game about mechs and farming. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jamey, for coming on to the Cardboard Herald.
My pleasure, Jack.
It's been a pleasure talking with you.
You too. You too.
That was a great conversation. I was so happy to be able to talk with Jamey. He was a nice dude. He was a gracious guest. He turned the conversation on me a couple points. It was just an awesome opportunity to talk with him, and he's a great game designer. Check out his games, and I'm really looking forward to having similar talks with other creative gamers and game creators to present to you, the listener of the Cardboard Herald. Now, as I said earlier, we need your questions. Email us at cardboardherald@gmail.com or tweet to us at cardboardherald. Also, do us a favor, spread the word, tell your dog, tell your coworker, tell your gaming group, tell your crazy Uncle Zeno about the Cardboard Herald, and then have them subscribe to us on iTunes and maybe even rate us if they particularly feel so motivated to do, and it would mean the world to us. And we're going to again have a awesome variety show, Secret Origins type of episode for the final end of the year Cardboard Herald podcast. And then we're going to start 2017 up again with the correctly pronounced Ted Alspach. Thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you next week. Additional music for this episode is provided by Cheap Beats. This particular track is F Funk by Vince Kaichan. You can check them out at cheapbeatsmusic.bandcamp.com. That's cheapbeatsmusic.bandcamp.com. What are you waiting for?
How was dinner?
That's what we're going to talk about, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the entire plan. This is actually a cooking show.
Hey, I'm Rob, and this is Casey.
Hey.
We're from Paper Heroes. We both DM stories for an actual play D&D 5th edition podcast. If you enjoy or have ever been curious about D&D,
or just need a good story and an occasional laugh, you should check us out. We have an excellent group of people playing, including Jack Eddy here, who really bring the stories to life. We can be found at paperheroescast.com, iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcatcher you use. Thanks for listening, and all hail he who reshapes.
Hail he who reshapes.